I'm Emery, I'm with Mindjoy, and today I want to talk to you about grief. Because when I look around, I see people are grieving. Grief is not just associated with when we lose a loved one. Grief can be associated with any type of loss. And when I look around, I see people who have lost their employment, their ability to go outside and have fun with their friends, their ability to go to the grocery store and find what they need. There are a lot of losses associated with coronavirus, and so let's talk about it and get through this together. I believe as a society, we have not helped people understand grief at all. 1,000 years ago, if you lost someone, your whole neighborhood would come out, everyone would put on black clothing, you would weep and wail together. We normalized grief. Today, we don't normalize it. And after 14 years in mental health, I have to say, I believe grief is one of the most misunderstood topics in mental health. People would always say, Emery, how long should I be grieving? Is this normal that I feel this way? And unfortunately, as a society, we've not helped people normalize the process. So I'm going to talk about it today and hopefully it will help. So according to Elisabeth Kübler-Ross, there are 5 stages associated with the grieving process. And these are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. In denial, we're sort of in shock and disbelief. Is this really happening? I don't think so. And I think I saw that around the world with coronavirus, people saying, myself included, is this really happening? Is this really as bad as they say it is? This stage is an attempt to suppress negative emotions such as sadness and anxiety. The second stage is anger. What happens in the anger stage is all the emotions we've been suppressing come back with a vengeance, and they're very painful. And painful emotions often come out as anger because it's easier to be angry than it is to be sad. During this stage, people feel frustrated and helpless. And when we look around, when you read the social media threads, when you go to the grocery store and you see upset customers, I have to say I see a lot of anger. But it's not because people are bad. It's not because they don't know how to cope. That's a stage of grief, and it's normal. So let's be mindful of that and give each other grace. Bargaining is a third stage. And this is the what if and if only stage. We ask questions about what could have been done differently to prevent the loss. It's a way to try and regain control because we feel like we've lost all control. And with coronavirus, I see this happening on a massive scale. People are blaming the president, or they're blaming their prime minister, or they're blaming another country or another people group. Unfortunately, it's resulted in xenophobia and discrimination towards the Chinese people, who happen to be my favorite people group. Well, I Zhongguoren. The truth is, we're just bargaining, we're just grieving, so let's normalize it, and again, let's get through this together, and let's give each other grace. The next stage is depression, and this is when the extent of the loss starts to hit home and people feel sad, and it's a great sadness. That's when they feel the depth of the loss. And I think a lot of people who are isolated and unable to work at this time are feeling this. It's starting to hit home how lonely you're feeling, how much you miss social connection, physical connection. If your identity was wrapped up in your work and you're unable to work now, that's a tremendous loss, and it can make you feel very sad. A lot of times people go into depression after retirement or having a baby because suddenly their identity has changed so quickly. And this has now happened on a global scale. And for essential workers and people that are still going full tilt during all of this, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the grieving won't even be able to happen to you until you're all done. So be mindful of that as well and take good care of yourself. And the last stage, according to Elisabeth Kübler-Ross, is acceptance. And this is not the, okay, I'm great, everything's fine now stage. It's I'm having more good days than bad stage, and I'm coming to terms with the loss. Now I want to propose to you a couple of things. First of all, grief is not a linear process. It's not like today I'm in shock, and then I'm in anger, and then I'm in bargaining, and that you cleanly move through those steps. We are much more complex than that. Life is much more complex. The truth is, grief is more like a roller coaster. One day it's smooth sailing, and then suddenly you hit a dive and a curve that you weren't expecting, and you go for a loop. And I say that because I don't want you to feel like you've regressed if suddenly you're feeling angry again when you thought you would move to a stage of acceptance. It's normal to go back and forth. It's normal to go up and down, good days and bad days. The next thing I want to propose to you is I believe there is a 6th stage, and I believe it's called meaning making. Now, I believe we are meant to have more than just acceptance, and that part of healing with grief is finding meaning and finding purpose, because then I think we find hope. As an example, I had a tremendous loss in my life, and it led to my profession as a social worker. That was a way of me making meaning out of a great loss. And with coronavirus, I believe that we can find meaning. If I ask and look around, I see people saying things like, wow, I'm spending more time with my family than I ever had before. I see people being thankful for what's important in life and rediscovering themselves. I see people having time for projects and creativity that they normally wouldn't have time for. I see communities coming together to support each other. Even though they physically can't come together, they're coming together in other ways. I see people running out and buying groceries for the elderly. I see, even though we're separated physically, we are coming together emotionally and spiritually in a way that we haven't before. And that is meaning making. And it's a way that we're going to heal through this process and come out better on the other side. We're going to come out stronger, more resilient. We're going to come out as different people. I heard a quote on a TED Talk that I thought was really meaningful. We don't move on from grief, we move forward with it. So we're not going to just get over this. We're going to take what we've learned, all the memories, all the experiences, those are going to now become part of who we are, and we're going to move forward, stronger than ever before. And now I quickly want to tell you some ways that you can cope with grief and navigate this well. First of all, accept and acknowledge the grief. Acknowledge what you're going through. It'll help you go through the process. Acknowledge that you might have some triggers. That's okay, and that's perfectly normal. Allow yourself to feel the grief. If we don't, honestly, it's going to hit you eventually, and it's going to hit you a lot harder. I knew someone once who didn't allow themselves to grieve for 10 years, and it came back with a vengeance. Eventually, we need to grieve. Our body physically needs to go through it, and our mind psychologically needs to go through it. I believe even spiritually and emotionally, we just need to go through it. So allow yourself to feel the grief. When the emotions come over you, let them wash over you, sit with them, and let them pass on. Be good to yourself during this season. Grieving takes a ton of energy. If you're feeling tired and achy, you might not be sick, you might be grieving. So take good care of yourself, try to get sleep, eat well, exercise, be kind to yourself, relax, have fun as much as you can, and it will help. Remember that grief is a roller coaster and not a linear process. Give yourself permission to have good days and bad days. It's completely normal. Connect with others as much as you can. During social isolation doesn't mean we need to actually be distant. Let's try to connect, find creative ways to engage with one another because we can get through this better as a community. And finally, look for purpose and meaning, and then you'll find hope. We're going to get through this, guys. A year from now, we're going to look back and say, wow, look what we got through. Look what we got through together. And I really hope when we look back, we see that we gave ourselves grace. We allowed ourselves to get through this process, that we helped each other instead of giving each other a hard time. And we're going to learn from this. Thank you, everyone. I wish you peace, happiness, a life full of joy. Stay safe, take care of yourself, and please share with anyone you think this might be helpful for. Bye, guys.